Okay, let's talk the Black Keys. Peaches.
Literally, I was like, whoa, that is crazy.
Volume slowly goes up.
I was so wrong. It sounded awful.
Yeah, didn't know what that was. Still don't.
You'll get there.
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Not in the Background podcast, your weekly dose of music talk and music recommendations. On this week's episode, I'm going to be taking a deep dive into the Black Keys' new album Peaches, which only came out last week. A bit of context on the Black Keys: they are a blues rock band that was formed in 2001, consisting of two guys, Dan Auerbach and Patrick Carney. They've released 14 studio albums across their career, with Peaches being their most recent, and it is also a covers album of a lot of old blues rock songs. As usual, I'm going to pick my three favorite songs off the album and take a deep dive into them. So let's get into it. So the first song I'm going to talk about off this album is Where There's Smoke, There's Fire. This was originally by blues guitarist Willie Griffin. If you listen to the original song, it's much more subdued and it's much more lower in its guitar tuning. So it has a dark feel to the song, a much more darker, melancholic feel. Whereas the Black Keys have moved the song to a much more upbeat, I'd even go as far to say happy tone to it. So it's completely different. And despite this being a covers album, you find this with all the songs. When you listen to the originals, the Black Keys have really put, their own sound on it, despite the blues influences still being in there, but they have also made something quite different with each of the songs. And I'd say if you listen to this album, also go back and listen to the originals as well. So listen to the Black Keys song, then the original, and keep doing it that way. So you really see the roots of everything, but the Black Keys sound comes through so authentically, and it's really, really cool. This song gets you right into the album because it's song one off the album, and it has all the raw, authentic aspects that you expect from the Black Keys sound. When you put on a Black Keys song like Gold on the Ceiling or Lonely Boy, you expect a certain kind of sound that they've brought together in their career, and they're straight in with this and has that sound on it. One of the things that listening to this album, and to be honest, listening to a lot of blues I like, is the raw sounds that almost makes it feel like you're watching a band play live. It's interesting, as I was doing the research for this episode and looking through the songs, I obviously came across the iconic blues group Muddy Waters, and I came across the song Mannish Boy. If you listen to the song Mannish Boy, in the background, the producer's actually shouting these various ad-libs, and I read that that's because the producer wanted the song to sound like it was being played in a bar. So going back to those really early blues roots, there's a lot of real raw live sound to them that have been brought into the current blues sound and into what the Black Keys do on this album. So it's so interesting to have made that distinction of it sounding like it's a live album, and then going back and looking at the research and the old sounds and finding that there's a comparison there and it's not a contrast, it works together. So that was really interesting. One of my favorite lyrics in this song is the opening lyric, actually, which is, "I'm burning for you, I need your love, we fit together like a hand in a glove." Very simple imagery, but it works. The song's all about having a real intense desire for someone and saying, "I'm burning for you," like that burning, that you associate that burning kind of feeling of I need this with desire. I think the burning and the desire words go together really, really well. So just hitting that in 4 words and then going on to the "I need your love," once again talking about the need before saying we fit together like a hand in a glove. It's almost like I need this, I have desire for this, and also just to point out that we work. So let's do this. Let's play some blues and have a dance and, enjoy all the romance of this relationship. So yeah, you get the authentic blues sound from this, and then the old blues lyrics that tell that story in a really simple but elegant way is also in this song as well, and throughout the album. One of the things that the Black Keys do in all of their work is there's a lot of distortion in there. When you listen to old blues sounds, like a more of the Memphis blues sound, it's a lot cleaner. So that's what you'd associate with like a B.B. King, for instance. You can associate that cleaner guitar tones. When you move towards the Delta blues, which is like the Mississippi blues, you get more distortion and more kind of slightly grittier sounding songs, which Black Keys use in a lot more of their music. So even with this song, there's distortion on Dan's voice as he's singing. There's distortion on the guitars. There's distortion on the brass sections. I think the only thing that doesn't have distortion is the drums in there. That's kind of it. Everything else does have a level of distortion, but it's really balanced. I think that there's a balance with everything you do. Like with, you look at someone like T-Pain using auto-tune, that's become part of his sound, even though he can sing. So there's a balance with the amount of distortion, the amount of auto-tune, the amount of I spoke about guitar solos last week, the amount of a guitar solo you can put into a song before it becomes a bit contrived and like, oh great, we're rock and roll, 2 thumbs up, let's put a guitar solo in. But with this, the distortion works and it really keeps the Black Keys sound without tipping over into, blimey, this is unlistenable because there's so much heavy distortion and everything. And I think it really adds a unique sound to the brass sections. In the opening of the song, there's a trumpet just before you go into the first verse that then comes back in for the chorus with the rest of the brass section. And it's quite low in the mix, but the distortion on that just makes such a interesting sound to the trumpet that wouldn't have been there, and it would have been too clean otherwise for a Black Keys song. So keeping that raw sound with this distortion on the different instruments really adds to the overall song. As you're talking about the chorus, move into the chorus, there's almost this like Motown swing aspect to it. I think, especially on songs 2 and 3 that I'm going to talk about after this, the Black Keys have such a plethora of influences. And their songs might tip more towards a bit of punk, or their songs might tip more towards blues rock, or, bluegrass, or rhythm and blues. Like, they jump between different genres and different things, and I found so many influences on the next 2 songs. So for the chorus on this song to move towards more of a Motown swing aspect than a blues, like garage blues sound, really once again is testament to the work that the Black Keys do. Whenever there's a ton of influence on something, that's great, because you know that a band is picking little bits from little artists and putting it together. You don't want a complete carbon copy of an influence, because then you may as well just listen to the influence and it's a waste of time. So yeah, really awesome to see the different genres coming into this. Final point on this song. So I listen to, whenever I do the research of these albums, I always listen with headphones on. These headphones, actually. And listening to headphones with this, you get guitars throughout the song just fire at you from different points of the mix. I think the initial guitar starts on the left side of the mix, and then as you get further into the song, the guitar solo later on in the song is kind of more towards the right. So you get this really overall well-rounded sound that just hits you from all directions. And this is song 1 on the album, so it gives you a real flavor of everything you're going to hear, the sound you're going to hear, and how all the songs are going to be mixed. So yeah, Where There's Smoke, There's Fire, originally by Willie Griffin, covered by the Black Keys in this album. Amazing song, really cool song to kick off the album with. Moving on to song 2. This song is called Who's Been Fooling You? And this was originally by Arthur Crudup. This one, when you listen to the original, it's much more simple. It's got those warbling blues vocals that you would associate with blues, the slightly pained, stretched notes that feel like a warble and feel like really help the story of the old blues songs. When you move towards the Black Keys songs, you get more of an upbeat northern soul feel to it, which is really interesting, because once again you're keeping the blues aspect, but then you're bringing in a sort of 60s northern soul vibe to push the song in a different direction. Considering all the songs on this album are blues covers, there's such a contrast between the influences on different things. Some of the influences on this song, which I discovered because there was so many, was, first of all, there was the Stone Roses. The drumming was very similar to Fool's Gold. Then there was some Love Spread in there, and Driving South, which was off their second album. So there was a few Stone Roses songs that I kind of thought of as I was listening to this. And it's testament to the blues influences, not just on this album, but on all rock music in general, because you can just pick points where it kind of hits depending on what song, what album you're listening to. Also, another influence which I think is strong with the Black Keys is Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix is a iconic guitarist and person and musician in the world of rock and roll and in the world of music in general, to be honest. And there's certain parts in here that have a bit of a Voodoo Child-esque muted strum to them, and then other parts where the guitars feel like they're almost toned and similar to the sound of that Jimi Hendrix guitar. So you've got another more rock and roll aspect in there, and another more rock and roll influence that's in there. It's so interesting talking about the rock and roll aspects, because then there's also funk aspects that come in on this album. When you listen to the pre-chorus of this, there's a bit of Stevie Wonder Superstitious in there, which in itself is an amazing song. I went for a walk yesterday when I was listening to this and trying to figure out, okay, what are some of the influences that are coming into this? And it was really annoying me that I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I was listening to the pre-chorus, kept listening to it, and then it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, this is Superstitious Stevie Wonder that's a bit in there. So you've got the Northern Soul, you've got the blues, you've got the rock and roll, and then you've also got a bit more of the funk in there, which I think really adds to the rhythmic quality to this album. It's really an album that you could dance to, and in a world of sort of rinse and repeat music sometimes, especially in the charts, when you've got something you could dance to that has so many influences, I think that's amazing, and really cool to see that people are still doing really interesting things with music despite the fact everything's kind of been done. So yeah, absolutely love that. Looking at the lyrics, there's actually a lyrical change here from the original song, and in the Black Keys version, in the first verse, there's the lyric, "I'm gonna strut my jelly mama, talk to who I please, let me strut my jelly mama for who I please." I just love that. It's just, you can say about that it feels like it's a expression of self-confidence, and I'm going to do what I want to do no matter what. And it's the strut my jelly just feels like such a classic blues lyric. And then the mama as well that adds in there. It's such a cool lyric. I didn't deep dive and sit there and ponder this for ages thinking, what is this about? I think, no, cool lyric about self-confidence that really helps with this song, because the song feels like the who's been fooling you is kind of asking a person or asking a woman, okay, who's been messing you around? And meanwhile, whilst we figure that out, I'm going to do my thing and I'm just going to be me. And if you like it, you like it. And if you don't, you don't. There's definitely something quite poignant in that. Moving on to the sort of later sections of the song, this is the first time where you get quite a keyboard-led section. Like a lot of the rest of the album, everything's kind of quite guitar-led, as you sort of expect with a blues rock album. But this is where there's a couple of songs towards the second half of the album that the keyboard is really the thing that brings you in. So the second instrumental break in this song is keyboard-led, and then the guitar comes back in over the top. But it's a real change of pace and sound and what you expect from a song on this album. Moving towards the end of the song, there's a real slowed down, proper blues outro with the guitar and drums, where it's kind of like a few little hits that sort of slow everything down, and then the hits of the crashes and the cymbals to finish off the song, give you a proper finite ending. Talking about all the musical elements on this song, it's so interesting because throughout a lot of this album, Dan's vocals are quite low in the mix. I always talk about the vocals being an extra instrument that can be used for an album. And I think on this album, the vocals are not necessarily the most important part. I think they're there to help the energy and bring a vibe and not necessarily punctuate through, hence the level of distortion that's on them. So yeah, it's the same with this song and the same with the previous song as well, actually. They're just sort of very low in the mix and they sort of balance over the instrumental, and then it's really like, okay, the vocals are there as part of this, but everything else is just as important. Moving on to my third and final favorite of the songs of this album, and this is my favorite song on the album, which is She Does It Right. This was originally by the band Dr. Feelgood, actually. When you listen to the original song, it's a bit more like a Chuck Berry song. The production and the vocals are very clean. I've already mentioned the distortion of Black Keys. This is a contrast there. It's actually just as a quick sidebar. It made me realize, and I'll do an episode on the Viagra Boys later, but I heard a lot of Viagra Boys in Dr. Feelgood and thought, okay, this is interesting. This is probably one of their influences. So it's so interesting how a song can be in one way and then a cover of it can move towards different directions. I'd say if the Viagra Boys covered this song, it would move much more towards the punk side, whereas the Black Keys covering it has moved it much more towards the blues side of things. So that's quite interesting. Talking about the Black Keys version, this is where again I saw and listened and heard so many different influences. The first song that came up was the song the song A Girl Like You by Edwyn Collins. If you haven't heard this, I'd suggest you check it out. It's very similar and the keyboard in it is amazing. and it was actually on the soundtrack to, I think, the second Charlie's Angels movie, which is why I know it. But yeah, it's a really, really cool song from the mid-90s. It's in a similar way to this song. It's about a mystery girl, and She Does It Right is also about a woman as well. I mean, the song's literally called She Does It Right, so it's not reading between the lines there. So yeah, that's definitely one thing that's in there. The drumming at the start as well gives me a bit of Don't Bring Me Down by ELO vibes too. There's a bit of ZZ Top in there, the song Legs, there's that in there as well. So, and this is within the first 15 seconds of the song. They obviously punctuate throughout the rest of the song as well, but I just immediately noticed these different vibes and different genres and different songs from history that come together to make this. Because then overall, this album and this song in itself is so blues rocky, and you have that Stevie Ray Vaughan sound that's in there. So once again, you're seeing so many influences to make this album and this song come together, which is fascinating. One of the things I love about this song, and like I said previously, this is where you start to get a bit more keyboard come into the songs. I think there's a Vox Continental organ that the keyboard player is playing. And the reason why I specifically mention that is because that's what Ray Manzarek was playing on his work with The Doors. So if you listen to Light My Fire and you hear that iconic keyboard sound, that'll be a Vox Continental organ. There were some changes that Ray made on his, which if you look up is really interesting to how he actually played on that song, so that he made subtle changes so that they didn't need to use a bass, which is really cool. So I suggest you check that out. But on this, you've got the Vox Continental organ sound. And it brings that slightly more psychedelic rock element to this. So if you're keeping a tally of the genres, we've got quite a few in there, and add psychedelic rock to the list too. I think the whole album, I believe, is in 4/4, the time signature, which is the most common time signature. And this where it brings that danceability to it, so you can just groove constantly to the song. Every song kind of blends from one to the next and carries on. And it's so good and so interesting and so high in its energy, which I love about this album and I love about this song. This song is much more on the Delta blues side. There's sort of an R.L. Burnside influence in there rather than moving towards other blues elements. And I noticed this before I'd actually looked up the rest of the song and the covers, but then I think it's the next song on the album is actually an R.L. Burnside cover. So you can really hear those influences coming through. To finish up here, I'll talk about the lyrics, because it's less about the lyrics, but it's the production choice that I really like here. Because towards the end of the song, they sing the lyrics, which is, I said I'd give her anything that her little heart desires, anything she wants just to keep her by my side. And at the end of each of those lines, there's a backing vocal where these women sing an ooh. And it adds just so much to that sound, and also that kind of psychedelic rock sound as well in there, which is really a nice production choice. This is when you've got so many influences coming in, there's so much intentionality in that. I don't know why I went a bit American there, but there's so much intentionality in that. And so all the little choices that are made in an album like this, you really start to pay attention to. And I just loved the lyrics here, obviously really bring in the meaning of the song. You know, I said I'd give her anything that her little heart desires, anything she wants just to keep her by my side. It's that, you know, she does it right. She does everything I want. So I'll do whatever I need to do to keep this woman. And the little oohs just really adds to that as a kind of back and forth of almost like, I said I'd give her anything. Then the you comes in to go, yeah, I understand. Then that a little heart desires, the you comes in. Yep, still understand. So it really adds to the line. It's such a little production choice, but it brings so much to it. Yeah, so overall, it's just a really amazing album. I suggest you check it out. It's only been out for a few days. Also, make sure you check out the covers. It's fun. There's high energy in there. You could dance to it. There's so many influences. I'd say there's even a bit of Revolver from the Beatles in there, which I know kind of led to the whole alternative rock genre of songs, but that's once again an album that comes into this. So have a listen to the album, see if there's any other influences you think I've missed, and let me know in the comments, because I'm interested to see what you think as well. I would suggest in terms of 3 songs to start with from the Black Keys, if you haven't listened to them. I would start with Lonely Boy and Gold on the Ceiling. I'd argue they're their most iconic songs, and they really give you an understanding of the Black Keys sound. And then I'd listen to She Does It Right off this album, because it feels like it's still in the Black Keys world, you know, the Black Keys cinematic universe, but it's quite vastly different to Gold on the Ceiling and Lonely Boy. So yeah, that gives you 3 songs to work with. Listen to those and then let me know what you think. Perfect. Thanks for listening and watching. If you've been watching this on YouTube, please give me a like if you like the episode and then subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you've been listening to this on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever else, make sure you give the episode a follow. And then if you liked it, give it a rating because that's really helpful for me. And then you won't ever miss an episode off there as well. Also, I post a community post each week with the 3 songs and you have a chance to vote for which is your favorite off of the album as well. So check that out and then tell me what you think. Tell me what you think of this episode in the comments. If there's any albums you think I should do, drop a recommendation in there, and then I will see you again for the next one.